sports? I know you are. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com, Monday through Friday, noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm Justin Fensterman, and let's break everything down from a fantasy sports perspective. Good afternoon, everybody, or morning if you're not on the East Coast. My name is Justin Fensterman, and this is Fantasy Sports Daily, part of the Elite Plus Network, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Give me a follow at Fensty Sports, FENSTY Sports on X and Instagram. Always down to talk sports with you. Always love it. The multitude of sports that we have to offer at FantasyGuru.com. Make sure you sign up, become part of the Elite Mafia, get involved in our Discord, very active Discord, including the NBA, where I head up for the site, also do a little football coverage for the site in season, and being on this stream with you Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Ray Flowers hosts Mondays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Ray Flowers is on the Elite Sports Show with Jeff Manns, 2 p.m. Eastern on Fantasy Sports Radio, Channel 87. So turn up the dial a little bit after my show here and check the guys out here, because where there's a chance to win, that's exactly where we're hanging out. So we're mid right now, All-Star break when it comes to basketball. On this particular show, it's going to be a lot of basketball, but then I'm going to venture off this time of year into other sports and other sports that we have to offer, because there are other ways to win. And even in NASCAR too, and we've got an incredible NASCAR team. Rich Maletto is going to join me in just a little bit to talk about the Autotrader 400 and just go over general NASCAR strategies too, as we look to get better. Very interested to see who he thinks, which drivers, before even qualifying, which drivers he thinks are going to be in a good spot heading into this race. So for me right now, I'm going to talk a little bit about how the sauce is made, because we have multiple basketball analysts at FantasyGuru.com, and we all have different ways we build lineups. Me, Scott Bonder, Armando Marsal, Mike Sillo, Mike the Beard, hanging out, Brett Wojtkowski. We all have different ways of lineup building. And for me, when it comes to what I look for, going to talk a little bit about that right now. And the first place I look for, because I talked about this with betting yesterday, make sure, by the way, you catch previous Fantasy Sports Daily shows where you can find all 595 episodes on the interwebs right there here. And you'll be able to catch yesterday's, where I talked a little bit about some end of season awards and maybe some wagers we should consider at plus money. So go check out that previous episode. By the way, if you are part of the Elite Mafia, the full episode posted at FantasyGuru.com in the Elite Plus section. That's where you can also find Fensty's Basketball Diaries, the weekly NBA podcast for the site. New episode coming out there. I did about half the league, talking about where we're at, just a little bit of a catch-up when it comes to these teams, what players we can rely on for DFS, what players could be coming back that have been injured that would impact the rotation. And for this week's episode, or I say chapter, I will be doing the other half of the league and talking about what players we're going to have to take advantage of for the remainder of the regular season. So we actually have gotten some questions answered regarding the Dallas Mavericks, because I thought, well, when's Kyrie Irving going to come back? And it's not looking like he's going to be playing this season. So that's going to make things interesting with Cooper Flagg for the rest of the way. But when I look for core plays, I'm not always looking at the top of the board when it comes to price point. I'm looking for sometimes balanced guys, and more often than not, actually, I'd say more of a balanced approach. There have been times where I've gone up to a top 3 price player, and if I think that the matchup is worth it, I have no problem with that. That's where the chalk is going to be. And there's some good chalk and bad chalk. There have been nights where I've had Jokic there, and Jokic is always going to cost a lot of money. But if I am going to pay up a lot of my core plays, outside of someone I talked about yesterday, Jalen Johnson, who's like 10-5 at this point, I try to stick with, if I'm going to be putting someone in the core 4, I really try to stick in that 9K to 9.9 range on DraftKings, because the purpose of the core 4 is to give you balance. The purpose of the core 4 is to give you openness with some of the other plays I write up, because all the plays that I write up, I'm not just trying to hit a number. Those are plays I believe in will get at least a 5x return on their value. So for me, when it comes down to it, I'm going to be able to, and I always put value plays in, a couple of value plays. I've been trying to lighten the player pool just a little bit, give you more of a direct approach. If I feel like a play is just for a GPP, then I will mention that the play is just for GPP too. And when you think of guys, even like guys on the Knicks, a lot of Knicks, for instance, because they're a popular team, I really only look at them for GPP purposes because they're very priced accordingly. Josh Hart is the only player I get away with, and it really seems like the output is worth it even more if a player is out in the starting lineup. Then Josh Hart does get up more of that usage. So I'm fine with that, and that's how I kind of view the Knicks. That's how I've been with the Knicks and all. So when looking for a core play, and we can even take an example, and might as well start looking because the NBA does resume tomorrow. We'll have a nice 7-game main slate on DraftKings. And I can tell you right now that I'm seeing teams like Indiana, Washington, we're going to have to be involved in that matchup. Both of those teams play very, very quickly, and both of these defenses are very vulnerable. So that's where now the big question is, who's going to be active, and that's why I can't put down who we're going to start from that matchup. But that's where I look first. I look for those fast-paced matchups that might not be a double-digit spread that we could take advantage of and utilize a lot of starters. So I'm fine with that matchup too. Houston-Charlotte is going to be a slow one. That's going to be an all GPP purpose plays because Charlotte plays good defense. Houston plays very good defense. And they both play slow. They both don't give up a lot when it comes to glass. They're just – the thing with Charlotte is it's funny. The Charlotte Hornets play like bees. They stick with their prey, and they always do. And once they feel threatened, boom, they sting you. That's exactly what this Hornets team does. They have quickness. They have defense. And their young players have been playing really well to transform them, especially defensively. They're a bit of a dangerous team the rest of the way. In fact, I'm actually looking at where Charlotte is right now. Charlotte's in 9th place. They are about 4.5 games outside of 6th. Here's the thing. Philadelphia at this point, they're going to remain without Paul George for a while. But even with Joel Embiid, they're going to get some wins off that alone. But Joel Embiid gets hurt, they're done. They're done at that point. And that's where maybe Charlotte can look to move up a little bit. The other teams that are right there up there in the Eastern Conference, the Pistons, Celtics, Knicks, and the Cavs, and even the Raptors, who have played tremendous defense too. They've really come to play, and they've shown what they can do. Even when they're not fully healthy, their depth has definitely shown up this year. But for me, when it comes to the Charlotte Hornets team, they play excellent defense. I don't like attacking them at all. Not fun at all to attack the Charlotte Hornets. It's just not. I've tried to attack them with bets. I've tried to attack them in DFS. Very difficult to do when they're at full strength. If you're going to attack Charlotte, attack them through their guards. Try to get to LaMelo Ball. That's really what we're looking at there. But I try to leave you guys on DraftKings about $5,800 to $6,000 on average to spend. Now, do you have to use the entire core four? No, you don't. And plenty of you don't. And that's fine. But the core four is there to try to give you balance. It's pretty much talking about top plays in different spots. And to me, if you utilize some of the other plays that are written up in the write-up and you stray away from the core four only using 2, I'm fine with that. It's very loose, and then it changes because we find out with the big injury dump, which makes NBA very tough, but that's why we're in Discord. And we have our Discord for that reason, and we're in there, and we're constantly watching because we know those injury dumps are crazy. Atlanta, Philadelphia, that's one that I want involvement with. Because Joel Embiid's going to be playing, and we know how fast Atlanta can play. But if Philly can stay in this game, which I think there's a chance that they do, I think that this game could mean a good amount for Philadelphia's offense. And the big question is, do we go after Tyrese Maxey? We've seen Philadelphia at times take a dump when it comes to these games, but that's a game that's interesting. Knicks Pistons is not interesting to me at all. Both of them play good defense. Slow, methodical, not really great for me. The Raptors, though, they're taking on Chicago, and we can look for a little volume production there. in that one. So that's really where I'm looking. Indiana, and I'm just using tomorrow's slate as an example, but Indiana, Washington's going to be a fast-paced game. Then you've got slow pace with Houston, Charlotte, and Detroit and the Knicks. Atlanta, Philadelphia is going to be medium. Brooklyn, Cleveland is going to be medium. The Raptors, Bulls is going to be a little bit on the quicker side. It's a lot of medium-paced games, so that's going to be hard to work against the pace in a lot of these matchups here. But looking even at tomorrow night's slate, do I always look at a Wembanyama that we can pay up for? I do. Phoenix has been good defensively, but their front court is a bit vulnerable, and that's where we can get to them a little bit. The big question is, though, are the Spurs going to be able to take care of them quickly? Wembanyama is one of the few players that can volume produce. It's been a little bit of an every other game type of deal lately when it comes to getting that 5x return on value, which we're looking for. But Wembanyama's defense has been impactful to the point where the Spurs are one of the most dangerous teams, two-way teams, in the NBA. And we've seen it. We've seen them play the Thunder well. And they've got that depth. I was talking about that a little bit yesterday too, with how Keldon Johnson now as a piece is a more valuable Keldon Johnson than when he was a number 1 or number 2 scoring option on a wasteland of a team with no direction. Times have certainly changed with San Antonio. They've got the depth. And if they can keep Wembanyama healthy, which at the end of the season was very tough to do, they keep Wembanyama healthy, then that will be an interesting, maybe even Western Conference Finals. Looking in the standings right now, these are your top 2 teams, the Thunder and the Spurs. You can't give up on Denver. I was talking with Armando Marsal yesterday on the show about that. Remember, Denver didn't have Jokic for a bit. Now they do. And we know how impactful Jokic is. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with these top 4. And it'll be even more interesting to see if the Lakers can get their act together, because I just don't think they have enough depth. I don't know how you look at the Lakers' depth and think that, oh, well, they have Luka and LeBron, they can win a championship. You need depth to win a championship. It's proven time and time again. Why do teams that you don't expect to win titles? Because of depth. I immediately think of the 04 Pistons, a ton of depth, a lot of it. The Bucks, when they went, a lot of depth. This Lakers team doesn't have a lot of depth. They have a top-heavy situation, and that's really what they're looking at. Hard to rely on guys off the bench. Yeah, a LaRavia comes through every so often, but beyond him, yeah, we know that usage is really soaked up by Luka and LeBron. Ayton's not as much of an offense guy. He's more of a defense guy in this team. That's his role. They need more depth, in my opinion. Minnesota has that depth. And I'm interested to see what they do, because they were entering the All-Star break hot, winning 7 of their last 10. And they've also, because I didn't realize this at the beginning of the year, but the Wolves weren't playing as strong of defense. I was like, what's wrong with this team? Why aren't they crushing right now? They've got the depth to do so. Their defense was lacking. Now their defense has picked up a little bit, and that's resulted in much better performances from them. The Suns have been hanging around, but they play very good defense. Their offense is in question, though, on a night-in, night-out basis, but they've played very good defense, too. But, yeah, the Thunder, the Spurs, the Nuggets, and the Rockets, I'm very interested to see what happens with these teams here, because with the Thunder, you got to think that they have enough to be able to repeat, but the Spurs don't have that playoff experience yet. They will soon enough, though. They'll have that playoff experience soon enough, and then they'll knock them off. Denver does, though. Houston's got a little bit of it. So in the Western Conference, do I think the Thunder are locked in? No, I don't. But it's going to be very hard to unseat them, unlike the Eastern Conference, where you've got a bunch of teams that I'm actually into. Back to the slate, though, using it as an example. So if I'm looking at some of these teams, here are some of the value that I like from, let's just say, Toronto, Chicago. Because at this point, when it comes to the Bulls, who have traded off certain pieces here, Matas Buzelis has been rebounding better, and that's going to make him worth it at his $6K price point. And moving forward, especially with no Vucevic anymore, they're going to need him to shoot. He's forced to shoot. We've seen him take a lot of shots, but the shooting has been a bit erratic. That's the problem with Buzelis. I thought he was going to have a much better season than he has. And It just hasn't been the case. And it's almost like he makes a little bit more of a reality impact than he does anything fantasy, anything DFS. But we were mainly seeing the scoring. That's it. But we've seen him block a lot of shots lately, too. He's actually blocking a shot and a half per game. And seeing that he should be taking more than 15 shots per game moving forward, too. And I feel like you're going to be seeing a lot more 15 plus efforts. The big question is, though, is he going to be able to grab enough boards? Because his stats have just been all over the place. Looking at some of the other value, and especially new value, the guard situation, Anthony Simons looks like he's going to be a pretty big part of this team, but he's going to be taking a lot of shots. Now, how much time will he have with the ball? They've got a lot of guys, Chicago, that can bring up the ball. Now, they've got Jaden Ivey, who they can utilize a little bit more. They don't give him a ton of shots, but they give him a little bit of time with the ball. They also have Colin Sexton, who can be a big-time help, who we utilized a little bit early on after the trade. Why? Because we knew those shots were going to be there, and he's a 5K range player. Will I ever really put a Colin Sexton up as a core? Not really. I try to avoid that. We know that he's mainly scoring dependent. But that's where Chicago is going to be looking for their offense when Josh Giddey is out or off the floor. So when Josh Giddey's there, it's going to be a lot of Giddey, and these guys are just going to be shooters. Now, I know we're waiting to see what the health situation is looking like, but the Vucevic trade signals strong value for Jalen Smith. Now, I think the sites will start pricing him up a little bit more, but Jalen Smith is someone who's proven himself when given those minutes. He's a banger inside, and he can also take you on the outside too and stretch the floor, kind of like what Vucevic used to do. And at the beginning of the season, kind of like most of last year, we were beating up the books when it came to rebounds against the Bulls and other stats against the Bulls. But then things started to change, and I noticed they weren't allowing as many rebounds to opponents. And I was wondering why, and I started to see the lineups, and you started to see a lot more of Vucevic and Jalen Smith on the court together. Well, now you don't have Vucevic anymore. So Jalen Smith being on his own, I think bodes well for Jalen Smith, because if you look from the size standpoint, they really don't have many other options to turn to. They don't. I mean, they've got Yabusele, who we're rarely going to use, if ever, for DFS. They feel that they've got something there. They've also acquired Nick Richards, too. Maybe Nick Richards becomes something, but I don't think he gets more than like 20 minutes, more than like, let's say, 15, 17 minutes most nights. So to me, Jalen Smith is gaining some value here and gaining some steam. And we already know he can rebound. So to me, that's where I'm looking when it comes to Chicago moving forward. This is a good way for me to talk about specific teams, even looking at the next slate. For Toronto, the big thing is, where now that they're at full strength, does Colin Murray-Boyles fit in? And that's where we have to all be careful, because we're not used to Toronto being at full strength. And now they're at where they're at right now. And we got to make sure that we're looking at some of these bench guys a little bit less, because now that Toronto's fully healthy, and especially coming off this break, you're going to have someone like Jakob Poeltl who's going to be playing more minutes. So Sandro Mamukelashvili is going to be at a more reserved role. Same with Murray-Boyles. But I will say this. I was wrong about Colin Murray-Boyles. I thought this guy had complete bust written all over him. But when he's been given the time, and it's not his fault, he's got a lot of ball-dominant forwards on his team. And when he's been given the chance, he's come through points and boards. He's absolutely 100% come through. So Murray-Boyles is, if someone goes out, someone to watch. But now that everybody's at full strength, it's really hard to trust these guys, because you're going to be seeing a lot of Barnes, Ingram, and Jakob Poeltl who didn't get dealt in the front court. Now, we even saw before Jakob Poeltl got hurt that he wasn't a nightly 30-minute guy. So maybe there's some room, and I think if there's anyone that could benefit from Poeltl playing a fewer minutes, it's not going to, unfortunately, be Colin Murray-Boyles. It is going to be Sandro Mamu. So I think that that's where we can look. And we'll also see, by the way, I'm interested to see how they handle back-to-backs with Jakob Poeltl too. They might rest him just to keep him healthy so they have him for the playoffs. I keep talking about Indiana, Washington. Let's just dive into them and talk about where we're looking here. I mentioned this before, but Jarris Walker, who I thought was going to take on a bigger role and then didn't, I now think he's going to moving forward here. No more Benedict Mathurin. They already are without Halliburton for the season. So to me, there's some room for shots, and we've seen it with Jarris Walker. Even going into the break, we've seen a lot more shot attempts, 14 plus in 3 of his last 4 games. And he's been helping out by bringing up the ball a little bit. And he's been grabbing a few rebounds too. I like that price point for him. And in a matchup like this against Washington, I think it's very fair. And I think he has a chance at getting a 6 to 7x return value. If anything, and look, we know that teams can boat race Washington. We know that. But Jarris Walker's, and especially with how lightning speed this game is going to go, Jarris Walker is someone, a cheap value option that I'm going to be very into for tomorrow's slate. I'll tell you that much. Not really someone yet I'm into when it comes to betting. Maybe we look at his points, but the points now that he's had a few 20-point games and he's in the teens, he's taken a lot of shots. Maybe we take a look at the points, but ultimately he's a hard player to bet. All the lines on him very sharp at this point. Other players we can look at too, and this is someone who I was looking at before, and we'll have to see if he's active or not too, but Andrew Nembhard is someone that we can look at a little bit more too. Also not a terribly expensive option going up against Washington, and Nembhard has been dishing a ton of assists, and that's been very crucial. And not only that, but he's also taken a ton of shots too. We've seen him actually dish. It's funny. He's averaging fewer than 8 assists per game, but so many 8+ assist games lately. And in a matchup like this is where we can trust him. I feel like we can. He's not as scoring dependent as he was earlier in the year. He was starting to rebound more, but then that tailed off. But the assist potential has been there. And again, no Mathurin there, so that gives him the ball a little bit more. Even though he's at 7,300, and I wish he was a little bit cheaper, that's a player that in a matchup like this against Washington, we can 100% look to go after. Somebody else I'm going to be looking at for reserves, especially if I think Indiana is going to get blown out. And this is not one of those games where I think that's the case, but when they're in blowout mode, Quentin Jackson. So if you think they're going to get crushed by double digits the entire game, Quentin Jackson is a good value guy for you guys to look at there because he could do a lot in 17 to 20 minutes. We've seen that already. From the Washington side, I mean, we'll have to see regarding the health of Alex Sarr, and it's not looking like he's going to play. So that's why I still worry, because Sarr not being in there, it's not as much they take the big man out. It's more that that's good scoring that's also taken out. So now when you think about the Pacers and what they could do, Pascal Siakam can eat them alive in the post, and we'll have to see that. He should probably, if there's anything to look at, if we get a decent rebounding line on Siakam, then maybe that's something to look at too. But we would need him to likely volume produce it, and that's not really ultimately his thing. But with Sarr out, I mean, Keyshawn George becomes even more of a factor too. He's going to have to take more shots, and he's going to have to help with this team. We also need to see what happens here with Trae Young, if he's ready to roll. I don't think he is right out the get-go, but I could be wrong. But all signs are pointing to him returning to the team in early March. So for me, when you're looking at this matchup from the Washington side, you can definitely look at Keyshawn George. You can look at Trey Johnson a little bit too. I mean, Trey Johnson, he's been scoring in double figures even more, scoring almost 13 points per game. But we should see that shot volume rise. He is a little bit scoring dependent. He does have handles, but he doesn't make the right pass in order to get the shot. He's more of a secondary passer, so he doesn't benefit from that, unfortunately. But in a matchup like this where you're seeing a strong back and forth potential, then you know what? I play to pace. I've always played to pace. Justin Champagnie. Now, with no Alex Sarr, this is a value guy that I'm going to be looking at a little bit more because the Champagnies know how to bang in the post. And we've seen him actually score in double figures and grab 7+ boards in 4 straight games. So with no Alex Sarr, the rebounding chances will certainly be there, but the shots will too. And he's been flirting with double-digit shots a lot lately, and that should give him more shots. They need him for the floor running exposure that he gives the Wizards and the good defense that he plays in the top of the paint, let's just say. So Champagne is definitely someone that I'm going to be looking at with no Alex Sarr. This Wizards team just doesn't have a lot of rebounders. This is why, by the way, when it comes to this Wizards team, I was fine with them making the trades that they did. They will never, ever attract a top free agent. They won't attract a B-lister. They won't at all. So they have to trade for these guys. And then if these guys, I mean, look, Anthony Davis, major risk when it comes to his health. Trae Young, major risk when it comes to his attitude and him tearing the team apart. But really, I mean, there's a nice foundation here. But the good thing about Trae Young and this whole situation with the Wizards, it's an experiment. And it's a 2-year process. And if Trae Young's not liking what he's seeing, he's going to go play elsewhere, and the Wizards can move on. Now, will they be able to attract someone in the open market? Maybe not. But could they trade for someone else? Yes, they could. Because at the end of the day, we've seen these guys get traded off for assets. Assets are huge. It's not about the player anymore. And so I think the Wizards making the trades that they did are interesting. But obviously, Anthony Davis has to stay healthy most of the year. But they're going to be intriguing to watch if everything can work out, and it's going to be a short leash. But until those guys come back, there's some nice value on this team. And with no Alex Sarr, I mean, why shouldn't Justin Champagne get mid-20s minutes? Doesn't make any sense. Why shouldn't he get mid-20s minutes in this matchup? He absolutely should. In some of these other matchups here, we can even look at Atlanta, Philadelphia for a second. And the big question is Joel Embiid going to end up playing for this game? If he is, then we're looking at Joel Embiid, 9,900. I mean, wish he was a little bit cheaper, but still, when Joel Embiid is in fast-paced games, and let's look at the pace chart while we're at it here. The pace chart over the last 10 games, you've got the Heat, the Mavs, the Blazers, the Bulls, the Jazz, the Timberwolves, the Wizards, the Pacers, the Hawks at 9, and the Spurs actually. The Spurs playing faster at 10. You can look at that a little bit more for San Antonio, that they're playing more up-tempo. The Hawks are at 9th. We want to go after that. And to me, as much as I love Tyrese Maxey and his game, it's when Joel Embiid is on the floor, Joel Embiid is beyond the focal point of this offense. And with no Paul George helping him out in the post, it's going to be all Joel Embiid. More time with the Rock, too. I think Joel Embiid is somebody that on those types of nights we're going to look to trust. Can we build around him? Yes, we can. We're at the point with Embiid where we know the deal. We know he's not going to play back-to-backs. We know that they're going to watch his minutes. But at the same time, could he potentially, in a matchup like this, put up 33 minutes? Yes, he could. Yes, he could. And can he give us a great output for the production? Yes, because there's one area with the Hawks that they have to figure out, and that's how to defend the low post, because they haven't done a great job of that, and that's where I think that he's going to be crushing them right in the post. If he stands outside at the arc and just shoots threes, that's going to be problematic for the value, and that's going to take away from it. But those are the teams from a pace standpoint that we want to attack. Obviously, the Pacers team is very hard to attack. But some of these other teams like Washington, like Indiana, Minnesota's been playing very quickly lately. Portland's been very up and down with their pace lately. The Bulls, the Jazz, we've attacked the Bulls and the Jazz all year long. So we'll continue doing just that. Then we'll go to some of the other games that are on this slate too, including Phoenix, San Antonio. Now, can we look at any option like a Devin Booker? Devin Booker is very hard for me to trust. He is. I rarely trust him anymore. If I write him up, it's for GPP purposes. Now, I just mentioned the pace. It is a pace-up spot for the Phoenix Suns, so they do benefit in that regard. But at the same time, the production has been so inconsistent for Devin Booker. Why would I pay $8,300 for him? That's the problem. We know he's going to get shots. We know he'll have his games where he's taken over 20 shots, but how many of those shots will he hit? And what will he give us with other stats too? They've got healthier guards on the team now. So that's going to take away the usage a little bit from Devin Booker. That's going to take the assist percentage. They need his offense at this point. This offense in Phoenix is pretty much, when it comes to anything somewhat consistent, it's Booker and it's Brooks. That's really what it is, as sad as that sounds. Mark Williams every other game, okay? Jalen Green's been banged up, but Jalen Green, we know he brings offense. Now, Jalen Green, just when he gets back in, he then gets banged up again. But with Jalen Green, you know you're getting all shots and that's it. But that's where a lot of the assists are going to be divided. And Devin Booker is just someone I've not been able to trust. I'll tell you this. I've written up Royce O'Neal more than I've written up Devin Booker. And that's because Royce O'Neal is a good value. He stayed under 6K, and a lot more times than not, he's hitting that 5X. Maybe just hitting it, but we know he gets the minutes. We know he'll take a lot of shots, and he's got that rebounding potential too that we've seen sometimes fly up. In this matchup, that won't be the case. But that I can't trust the Suns. It's been very hard for me for the last few years now to trust Phoenix and what they're doing. But they play good defense, and that's where we can look at San Antonio's options very, very safely. So I'll have some bet skis up tomorrow I'll have a new podcast episode up regarding the Western Conference teams and what to expect here for the rest of the way, what players to look at for DFS. So make sure you lock that in at fantasyguru.com tomorrow. Let's actually welcome in now to talk a little racing, Rich Maletto, the fantasy Bosco. What's going on, Rich? How you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. What did you think of the Daytona 500?
I don't want to be
negative Nancy. But this idea of running 40 to 50% throttle for 3/4, 90% of the race has got to stop. The drivers admit this, everything else. Overall, I was happy cars were on the track. I'm not a big fan of the 2-3 wide the whole time. I'm not a fan of the fuel mileage. The crazy finish was fun. To be fair, I was more impressed with the truck race because it's typically chaos, and it was one of the cleanest races of the three. It was cleaner than Saturday's event. That we had some young guns, some old school talent. Like, that was a lot of fun. NASCAR is back. I don't want to poo-poo on it, but there's some work to be done at the super speedways with what NASCAR has developed with this car.
So, Rich, I was thinking a lot about our conversation last week and how we can hone in. And do you take what you see from the Daytona 500 and apply some of what you saw to the Autotrader, or is it just way different and it can lead us down wrong paths?
There is definitely some things we can take from Daytona and apply it to races at Atlanta and Talladega. Because the cars are all about drafting, and I would say this, all things equal, say it's a brand new repave at all three of the tracks, which as tracks wear, that's not fair to say. It gets character, they get harder to drive on, bumps develop, that sort of stuff. The thing is at Talladega, it's wider. It's all about speed. You trim out the car where it's not so much about handling. You want all the speed you can get. Historically, they used to joke that you went for speed at Dega and you went for handling at Daytona because it's a little more narrow. You've got to, especially coming out of 4. All the incidents we saw was a lot of coming out of 4. And Joey Logano did a great job in the booth breaking down why that's a problem and how having wheel input plays into it and how when you're on the bottom, it can get dicey and the airflow and all that. Atlanta, especially now that we've got a few races under our belt there, has definitely turned more into a handling track. Atlanta very much reminds me of old school Daytona and Talladega, where we get 3, 4, 5 cars kind of together. Further back, you'll see some 2 wide racing, but you really don't see the 2, 3 wide stuff until the last couple laps as they're really trying to get to the start finish line and collect the checkered flag. So there is some stuff, but you'll notice when I go through the data, there isn't 100% overlap. Like Bubba Wallace does decent at both tracks, but he's typically better at Dega and Daytona than he is Atlanta. Daniel Suarez has been kind of up and down at Daytona and Talladega, but he seems to have a decent knack at Atlanta for some reason. Drafting drivers, though, are good drafting drivers, right? So the Joey Logano's, the Brad Keselowski's, they find their way to the front at Daytona. They find their way to the front at Dega. They'll find their way to the front at Atlanta. It's more interesting when you start breaking down the data and you see that, Keselowski, for whatever reason, has a whole bunch of horrible finishes at Talladega, I believe. I believe he's got wins at Daytona and not Talladega. I could have them backwards. It's kind of mumbled in my head here. But bottom line, at one track, he's had quite a bit of success. The other track, for whatever reason, he's had a bunch of DNFs and bad luck. Same driver, same equipment, same style of driving, just weirdness, right? But yeah, there's stuff we can take from Daytona. I mean, perfect example, let's look at the odds. The odds this time last week, all the favorites were about plus 1,000. The first 5, 6 favorites were all 10-1 odds, right? Guess what? This week, identical. Not the same drivers per se, but the 5 favorites are all in 10-1. And there's at least overlap on 3 or 4 of those guys. Ryan Blaney was in the top on both lists. He's second or third for this weekend, and he was like second or third in odds last weekend. Ryan Blaney doesn't have a win at Atlanta. However, since we've gone to this new repave, he has the most top 10s of any of the active drivers.
Ooh.
He has 6 out of 8 top 10s here, whereas William Byron's got 2 wins, only has 4. Trying to think, I'm going off of memory here. Daniel Suarez has 1. He's got 5 top 10s, if I remember correctly.
What about Christopher Bell?
Bell, I believe, has a 1, and I want to say
that was last year at the Autotrader.
Right. He's got 3 or 4 top 10s. So what's interesting to me is we're not really able to focus on a lot of guys outside of Blaney that's really got a great top 10 record, but we've got wins from these other guys. And Bell, he's run well at Daytona at times, but what did I tell you last week? He's a little nerve-wracking for the week. He's had some struggles lately. He finally started looking good again, and guess what? Got caught up in an accident. There's some of it's luck, don't get me wrong. Some people just have bad luck. Some of it you create your own luck. Bubba got caught up into it, but historically he avoids the mess. Kyle Busch, hat tip to Kyle Busch and black flag to his spotter. 4 laps to go. He's in the thick of it where it's getting into chaos. He backs out of it, drops to the back. Spotter comes on the radio. Out of gas, what's going on? He goes, why am I hurrying up to be in the wreck? We're running 30th. Guess where he ended up finishing the race?
Where?
8th.
Oh, wow. Just because he fell back towards the end and just
he fell back.
He anticipated the wreck was coming, and he decided rather than trying to just drive through it and beat it or even drive around it, he's just going to fall back for a little bit.
He didn't even fall back because he fell back, but he didn't lose the draft. Once you lose the draft, you're toast for the most part. But he fell back going, I'm not going to be in the middle of this wreck. These guys are in the middle of creating a wreck. I'm not going to be here for it. So he dropped back in line, and all of a sudden, and 2 wrecks happened on the last lap. You saw the finish. There was 2 wrecks that happened on the last lap. One of them happened at the start of the front of the field, right? And they just started collecting, and it was, dodge him in the back. Well, Kyle got hooked up with someone and just started driving through that mess and ended up 8th. So hat tip to Kyle, because we talked about the changes to the system. That drive, what he did right there, could be a massive difference for him come the end of the year. People can be mad about points racing. That was heads up smart driving. He's got another top 10 finish, 8th in points now, or somewhere in that ballpark. And guess what? He doesn't have a DNF like somebody else that's got 0 points for the week and is having an uphill battle. So mad props to Kyle. That's forward thinking. That's how you prepare to win a championship. That's the type of stuff I said I expect to see different. And guess what? We didn't see a lot of the kamikaze driving this weekend. We really didn't. Some people may be upset about it. I wasn't. I don't mind not seeing a bunch of wrecked cars. What I mind is driving half throttle for 98% of the race. That's some shit.
I mean, dude, I know people want to see wrecks and stuff like that, but it ruins the race. It's like fights in hockey, let's just say. Okay, you get like a 2-minute or a 5-minute major or 2-minute minor, and then you're good.
Back on.
But it ruins the race. It takes out a bunch of cars most times.
I used to go and hope to see a wreck when I first started going to races. I can't lie. It's awesome when you see a car just get destroyed in front of you. It's crazy. then you see a couple of them where people are hurt, rush to the hospital, not sure how they're going to be. All of a sudden, I don't know. And I remember my grandfather saying, Richie, we don't come to the race to watch wrecks. Now, that's fair. Now I'm older. I just don't care to see them, man. I just don't. And some of it's
you're also a content creator too.
Well, and some of it is I don't want our bets being hurt, right?
No,
I mean,
no,
the wrecks don't help that stuff either, right? But for me, I know they're going to happen. That's the part of racing. That's part of why we watch, and it's exciting. You're watching these drivers drive these vehicles on the edge of out of control, barely holding on. Things are going to happen. The first thing I want to see is someone walk away. Like, I've just seen too many of them now where, especially I've said this for years, NASCAR won't be happy until they can't kill the driver or fan at Daytona and Talladega again.
Right.
And people get mad at me. Well, look at the engineering marvels. Ryan, there are 2 pieces of equipment on cars because of Ryan Newman. To this day, doctors don't know how he survived the last incident at Daytona. I call it divine intervention. Others say it's an engineering marvel. I keep saying, why do we have to create such chaos where it's only a matter of time? Because when you have 30 cars that get wrecked every time you go to these places, or 20, something's got to give. It's sheer numbers. It's just sheer numbers. We only go to those tracks 6 times a year, only 4 in the past. So to say that nothing happened in 20 years doesn't say much when 20 years of racing to those tracks is on par of 3 years of racing all the other tracks, right? As far as the numbers go. So wrecks are going to happen. There is some craziness when you see it. At the short tracks, I don't mind it. When you're doing 70 to 120 miles an hour, these cars are designed, right, to take it. When you've got 40 cars separated by inches at 190 plus miles an hour, I don't know, man. To me, that's more Roman-esque bloodthirst type stuff than it is, competition.
Well, let me ask you this. Are there a few drivers that when you're doing your write-ups that you maybe want us to stay away from because they tend to be a little bit too aggressive and get into wrecks and then essentially lower our scoring ceiling in DFS?
I tend to fade Joey Logano a lot, okay? Joey will get you to the front, I promise you. He's also the only guy I've seen block 3 lanes of traffic at one time. He tends to get into trouble because of it. He's boom or bust. So it's often like football. Sometimes you go boom or bust for that contrarian play because you want the low ownership, like you've talked about in the past. Does ownership play in to how we build these lineups? I think you have to be honest about ownership or it doesn't work. Being chalky in NASCAR can work. Mark Hogan has said it well. Eat the chalk at the top, fade the chalk at the bottom. So if you want to eat the chalk with Joey at the top, that's fair. Or as his ownership's been coming down because he's kind of boom or bust, there's a contrarian angle. A lot of people like to avoid Ricky Stenhouse. They call him Recky. Recky Stenhouse. I actually know Recky personally. I'm not a fan of that nomenclature, but I get it. A lot of people fade him unless he's in the back. I don't mind it when he's mid-pack because I'll take a shot at him at these drafting tracks. He does well at them.
Ricky Stenhouse Jr.?
Yeah, so my uncle and cousins used to go-kart race against him. In fact,
nice.
I was with my uncles and cousin. We were racing, and they wrecked the car, and we were trying to get the cart back together. And Ricky had this great trail. His dad had this great trail and all the tools and said, hey, come on in, take what you need. I was like, man, that's really big of you. He goes, we just want to have competition out here. He says, everybody's pretty good. No one's really stealing stuff. Just ask you to put it back or let us know what it is so we can get it replaced. So I have a real hard time with the flack thrown his way because I look at it from a grassroots standpoint. And he's the type of guy that helps get young people racing. And he was talented, what I saw. And he was a lot of fun to be around. And yeah, he's a bit aggressive, but so is Hurricane Hocevar, and I see people all over him loving him. So it depends on if it's hurt your driver or not. It's just like the hate Hamlin gets. I don't understand it. People hate him because of the hooker thing in the past or whatever, or because they don't like Michael Jordan in the sport. If I'm going to dislike a driver, it's because I don't care for the things they themselves say or do. I want to see Bubba Wallace do well. I just wish he would shut his mouth at times. There's times when I'm like, bro, you make it hard for me to like you. Joey Logano, every time you do something I love, then you open up your mouth again, and I have a hard time wanting to cheer for you.
Right.
And even he said he's got to be better about being a poor sport. I can't remember who it was that called him out, but he made a comment and someone called him out for being a poor sport, and he paused and went, now that I'm up here in the booth and I look at it from that different angle, he goes, it's hard when you got the helmet on and the emotions are high and tensions are high and you're getting out of the car and you're angry. I can appreciate that. But don't be a hypocrite about it. Joey, I've seen you run people over to get a win. Don't be mad when someone runs you over to get a win. That's kind of what you signed up for when you act that way, right?
Right. So looking at the Autotrader 400 here and some of the high-priced drivers, I mean, you talked about Joey Logano. He's 10K on DK. Blaney's up there too. Chase Elliott also. Our guy Billy Bye, William Byron too. Only one top 10 finish, Billy Bye. What's going on here, man? Who do you like? I mean, I even mentioned last year's champ, Christopher Bell. Who do you like at the top end for DFS?
For DFS, here's the problem with DFS. We're going to be chasing place differential again. It won't be as extreme as Daytona, but if Ryan Blaney qualifies 14th or 15th, sign me up. Sign me up. Kyle Busch. If Kyle Busch starts on the pole again, he could be a contrarian option, so I might like it because he's got a pretty good record here, okay? And he's due for a win, right? Hurricane Hocevar. If he starts in the back, everybody's going to be on him. He's going to be Chalky Chalkerson. If he starts in the top 5, he's probably going to be low ownership. I might be more interested on the low ownership side of it because he is such a wild card. I'll let the chalk do that, right? Kind of like I faded William Byron everywhere this week in DFS. Why? The odds of him winning 3 in a row were stupid.
Right.
Unlikely. So the way I looked at it was maybe this is just a bad weekend for him, right? Like they have bad weekends, bad runs. You've had back-to-back wins. After you had the trouble in the duels, maybe we should just fade you. Well, wasn't a great fade because with 2 laps to go, he was in the top 8. I don't know where he actually finished, but his all taped up, damaged ass car was running in the top 10 with 2 laps to go. So it wasn't necessarily a good fade outside of, I kind of said the luck was a concern and that I expected a bad race weekend, right? So I'm more eyeballing kind of the mid-tier guys right now. Like I'm back on Todd Gilliland, who unfortunately was my favorite option, highest owned driver in DFS, didn't help the lineups. I mean, I didn't do terrible this weekend, kind of came close to breaking even with a couple of low scoring contests, but I'm back on Todd Gilliland. I think you got to look at the Fords. So that includes front row, the 38, the 34, which would be Zane Smith, who had a nice run. I'm bummed I didn't post his bet for top 10. I had it typed
Rich,
up.
he's 6,100. That's it.
Right. So for a top 10, he's probably plus 300.
Yeah.
So 3-1 on a top 10 bet, and all he's got to do is finish in the top quarter or third of the field. That's kind of where my focus is. Like I said, I had a bet typed up on Saturday night and got distracted with the dogs and decided not to post it, and I'm still salty. Like in the middle of the first stage, I told the wife, I'm so mad. She goes, well, it's early yet. I'm so mad I dropped the ball on that one. I really am. But that's more what I'm looking at.
Rich, will you post like during the race? Will you post live bets and everything like that, or do you try to have everything all set up beforehand?
I have not. It's something I've considered, Justin. I think that's a fair question. I think I should consider posting some live bets. The problem with NASCAR live bets are they lock so freaking fast and they change so fast. Yeah. So the ideal situation is we want Kyle Busch, but at plus 300, we don't want that action. Because of an accident, pit stop, he ends up in the back. Now all of a sudden he's plus 8,000. Like one of our members did bet live Tyler Reddick mid-race. Got him at 80-1.
Wow.
So why? So because he really wasn't one of the favorites. He was the whole time he was a plus 4,500 type of bet. Well, he was at the back and struggling. So if you catch it at the right time, you can take it. I used to do that on Corey Heim. I'm like, guys, don't bet Corey Heim at minus 130. Let's see if we can get 3-1 odds sometime mid-race after a yellow flag. a green flag pit stop, after off sequence. I don't care if dude gets a lap down. If he ends up a lap down, let's hammer it, because now we're going to get an 80-1 bet, right? And he can get that lap back. So I don't know. It was right after a caution flag because the booth was talking about Reddick, and the guy took note and said, let me go see what he's at. So I want to start watching it. Here's the other trick bag. You can't do top 5, top 10s on lives. It's only winner bets.
Right.
So if I really feel like I'm in on a guy and it's early, I may go ahead and do that if we can hit the lines right. But it's been so hard timing it has been the problem. Plus, I'm not in a legal state, so I got to hunt the offshore books, and they're slower to update.
Yes. No, you're absolutely right about that. But Rich, also with Sean Angle and the Marlin, Mark Hogan, not only do the Race Guru Thunder Hour, which, Rich, every week, what day is that going to be unleashed to everybody at FG?
We're hoping to continue to do the live stream that you jumped on Wednesdays, which we appreciate
because
you jumping
you know
on.
why? You know why? And I'll say this on the stream. When Mark Hogan made the comment that a certain ESPN, or maybe former ESPN personality was taking his stuff, I was dying when he said that.
That's hilarious. That was hilarious. And I still don't know who that is.
I do.
Oh,
Writes a lot. It ventured up in the world very quickly, let's just say. I'll leave it at that. So, but ultimately, I mean, you guys are just so great with your stream. It's a fun stream that you did. And also the Race Guru Thunder Hour podcast that you put out. Also, by the way, in the Elite Plus network. Rich, let me tell you, man, it just seems like so far one of the things I'm learning is qualifying and where they are afterwards too really impacts what we're going to be looking at here when it comes to DFS.
Always, even when we go to tracks where qualifying matters. So I'll go this far. Qualifying at Daytona, Talladega, and even Atlanta don't matter much, okay? Because the whole pack is so close. Daytona's a perfect example. 40 cars were separated by less than a second. And it takes 47 to 49 seconds to get around the track.
Right.
Okay? Atlanta's going to be a little different because we're going to be more into that. I think it's like 29 or 30 seconds a lap, somewhere in that ballpark. I'll have to go look. So you can go a lap down pitting. So pit strategy and them pitting together is going to be a big deal. So we could have our hearts yanked from our chest at some point simply because someone has a bad pit stop on a green flag racing. Too many men over the wall too soon. Didn't get the lug tightened, too fast entering, too fast exiting, that sort of stuff. That's going to cost them 2 laps and is going to kill our potential without some fluky stuff happening. Don't have that issue typically at Daytona and Talladega because it's harder to go a lap down, and we typically see enough cautions that you can get it back, especially with the stage breaks, right? When we go to short tracks, we got to be careful chasing the gravy, the free squares at the back of the pack, because there's not a lot of room to pass at Martinsville.
Right.
So you could get lapped early on and find yourself in a world of hurt, and that's a problem. That being said, we can't ignore the fact that you get 1 point for every place forward you finish from where you qualify. So when you look at like last week's scores, the top scorers, a couple got into the 69s and 80s, but a lot of what you need in your lineup were 47 to 56, 58 point scores. Well, shoot, Fensty. 10 points is a big swing when you only score 58. Your 48-point score just scored 58. It's pretty significant when you look at the pay line from 297 to 307 went from, 50 per getting your money back, doubling up to 1.5, right? So we have to chase. This is something I've learned about DFS that Mark has really kind of taught me. Chase points, not finishes. You could have a guy that's, and this is where it's a nuance with the place difference. You could have a guy starting 14th and only gets in the top 8. There's enough points scoring top 8 plus the additional 6 or 7 points that puts him in top tier scoring. Versus someone that starts 30th and ends up 22nd. Okay? Because, those 8 bonus points are stellar, but 22nd scores half or a third of what 8th place does. So there's a fine line on where do we want to chase the place differential and where do we want to chase the finishes. And unlike football, the consistency is even more like all over the place. Like I said, Ryan Blaney has the most top 10s at this style of track. 6 out of 8 races, 0 wins. Daniel Suarez has 1 ins, but he's got 4 top 5s and 5 top 10s, right? Out of 8 races. So there's a balance. I want some place differential. And this, to your point, and I know you mentioned it, off the show before, this is where it really, really matters from an ownership standpoint. Because if I'm going to chase place different, or if I'm going to chase point or a finishing order, I want to do that with my contrarian plays, right? Because I'm hoping that guy finishes better than everyone else. Everyone's chasing the easy place differentials. Everybody's chasing the guy that started 30th that normally finishes 15th or better. So we're going to have to probably eat that chalk. We're going to have to find differences somewhere else. Does that make some sense?
No, it doesn't. I was actually about to ask you about that, whether or not you just take that, if everybody has learned over the years to do that, to even maybe someone who's not going to win, but someone who can advance up half the field. And a lot of people are going to be on those drivers.
I don't know what people have learned. I think you have a group that chases a lot of recency bias with place differential and driver speed. I think you still have people that struggle with chasing finishing order, not the points. And I also think it's so wild card that you end up, I have seen more and more lineup trains lately. Interestingly enough, my lineups are almost never really with the lineup trains. I mean, I may overlap on 3 drivers or something like that, or even 4, but this is where you've got to, and here's the thing, you can be contrarian and it not be massive. Say you're debating between Ricky Stenhouse and Zane Smith, and you nail it. Zane Smith's only 3% owned and Ricky Stenhouse is 12% owned, 20% owned. The scoring difference between them two can be so minuscule that if you get the guy that's slightly better, because of the lineup trains and stuff like that, you may see a difference in pay that's significant enough. Does that make sense? Right?
No, it does.
But at the same time, overall, you guys aren't really that far separated from the masses entirely, because to give you an idea, my lineup that doubled up Fensty in a tournament, and it was just a $1 tournament. Not a single driver in my lineup was less than 23% owned.
So you just ate a bunch of chalk and it worked out.
Right.
And sometimes
that's where I was saying eating chalk in NASCAR works, because when your driver crashes and 70% of the lineups are impacted, you're not out of it.
Right.
You're still in the running, because those other 30% may not even have, some of them are just going to have these fluky weird lineups that aren't going to matter anyway. Right. And this is where I said Mark has really educated me, where eat the chalk where it makes sense. Right? Let's eat the easy chalk. Where we're going to be different is at the bottom. And where it gets tough is someone like Ricky Stenhouse starting 35th. Everybody's going to want to use him. And he's finished top 10. So he was a good pay plan, right, to go that route. But when I take down tournaments and I'm good for a top 3 or top 5 finish 2 to 3 times a year and taking one down once every other year, once a year, something like that, I have hit on a 3% or 8% or less ownership driver where they've been a top 5 scorer. That is really the difference, because if you eat the chalk everywhere else, that's the difference that you make up. You've got to be different on at least one driver, really more like 2. Getting 3 different works if they pay.
And you're right about that. And that's how I've been building basketball cores this year. It hasn't been as cash happy as I have in the last 2 years. You can't do that anymore. You won't cash. At this point, you got to have a player of differential in there and not always go after the guys. Oh, this guy's out. Let's start their backup center just like that.
Can't do anymore. Can't do anymore.
In some cases, it's fine. But in other cases, stick to the core. Because then I'll have those nights, like you were saying, where I'll be different and I'll be able to beat that when those core chalk plays that I didn't go after would come through. Who do you think is going to win the race at this point?
I'm going to give you 2 names. I'm on Ryan Blaney and Kyle Busch.
Okay.
That's where I think we need to really focus.
So those two right there, make sure you go to fantasyguru.com to get more info leading you right up to the Autotrader 400. Rich Maletto, Sean Angle, Mark Hogan do a great job. Rich, thank you so much as always for educating us on some NASCAR. It's important because while we focus on the majors when it comes to the sports, there are other sports that we have to offer on this site where you can win, and you guys do a damn good job, and we got to spotlight that.
I tell you what, the fun thing, and this is something else I do with DFS. If I'm going to bet on drivers, I try not to put them in my DFS lineup. So that helps me get contrarian at times, right? Because oftentimes I'm not the only guy chasing a Ryan Blaney 10-1 bet or something, right? But we don't care if everybody else is chasing it, other than I do like to zig when they zag type of thing, right? But to your point, I would argue, and this is what we're hearing from the folks in Discord, they love betting NASCAR. Imagine with 3 laps to go, you're sweating a 10-1 bet. Like legitimately sweating it because your guy's in the top 5. Right? Like that happened to us Friday night. We had multiple people there in the top 5. It didn't work out for us. But with 3 laps to go, we had a significant sweat on a 15-1 driver, on a 20-1 driver.
Nice.
So if you enjoy those sweats and you are, the one thing I ask is you don't expect us, but oh man, I'm going to go bet $100 and win 1,000. Don't expect that. But if you want to have some fun and are good chasing some longer shot bets with legitimate chances to win, I don't want to say they're lottery tickets because we put more effort into it than just random numbers. But it's an honest to God ticket where can we make bets in football and basketball where our favorites are 3 or 4-1?
Right. Can't do that.
You can't.
Only futures. And at the start of the season.
And I typically chase the top 5, top 10 bets, and Jen says I'm good at it, where we're getting 2-1 or 3-1 on our money, sometimes 1.5. But if we're going to hit those 60% of the time, we're going to be up units by the end of the year, and we're still chasing 3-1 bets.
He's Rich Maletto. I'm Justin Fensterman. You can find both of our work at fantasyguru.com. Rich and I are going to be talking a lot of NASCAR here on Wednesdays. I'll also hit you up with some basketball too. For the Bosco, I'm the Fensty. Ray Flowers back tomorrow on Fantasy Sports Daily. Same time, same place, same channel, noon Eastern, Elite Plus Network, powered by Fantasy Guru.